Snowpiercer is a 2013 film directed by Bong Joon-ho. Much like his most recent Oscar-winning film Parasite, social hierarchy is deeply ingrained within the narrative. It was adapted from a French comic book series first released in 1982 about a train containing the last of humanity after a climate disaster. Following the success of the 2013 film, the comic series was translated into English and has continued to be a popular intellectual property to this day, with it being again adapted into a TV series about to air its third season. Understanding the social hierarchy within Snowpiercer is crucial to exploring the philosophical and contemporary discussions within the story. In this video essay, I'll be analysing the use of metaphors within the film to achieve this. Metaphors are extremely prevalent within our culture and our lives, and it can be suggested that the use of metaphors can make mundane and boring areas of life seem abstract and exciting. Metaphor use helps individuals to satisfy the epistemic motive to find meaning in life. Many films have metaphors ingrained within their narrative, which encourages more philosophical themes and more depth than you might get out of a classical narrative. I am going to be applying conceptual metaphor theory to analyse the use of metaphors within Snowpiercer. Conceptual metaphor theory was first explored in The Metaphors We Live By Lakoff and Johnson. This analyses a metaphor by reducing it to a controlling metaphor, and then it deconstructs it into two parts, the source domain and its target domain. In the case of Snowpiercer, this is the controlling metaphor that I will be analysing. Social hierarchy is linear space. I'm using conceptual metaphor theory through referring to one of Lakoff and Johnson's definitions of an orientational metaphor. This is high status is up, low status is down. Much like the film High Rise, Snowpiercer uses a linear orientational metaphor to highlight the social status hierarchy. In High Rise, this metaphor very closely follows the definition by being a tower block. In Snowpiercer, however, the metaphor of a train is utilised to have a horizontal spatial metaphor to convey the social hierarchy, rather than a more traditional vertical one. This metaphor is set up in the film's opening, with this representation.
I am a hat, you are a shoe. I belong on the head, you belong on the foot.
The meaning of this metaphor is that the spatial difference between the top of a head and the bottom of a foot relates to the difference between social status. This initial example is expanded upon within the larger orientational metaphor of the train. This metaphor is integral to the storyline of the film, as it is the driving force of the narrative, with those at the bottom of the hierarchy trying to reach the top to incite change within the social status. This leads the narrative to explore contemporary issues such as the impact of social class. The social hierarchy on the train can be divided into two groups, those right at the front of the train and then everyone else, with everyone else having a decreasing degree of power and wealth as we go further back along the train. The metaphor of a train enhances this, with each carriage further back representing less and less social status. The cramped conditions that the audience are first shown juxtaposes with the later luxurious conditions. The metaphor of a train also implies the ability to travel between carriages. However, the film emphasises that this is extremely rare when the protagonist Curtis is told,
"You are the first human being to have walked the total length of this train, tail to engine."
This conveys how little control the passengers have with where they are placed on the social status hierarchy, with the only one seeming to have any control over this being the owner of the train, who is right at the top of the hierarchy, and this is seen in the final act of the film as he tries to convince Curtis to become his successor. Despite the fact that the owner of the train is right at the top of the social hierarchy, he claims that
"We are all prisoners in this hunk of metal."
It can be argued that the metaphor of the train within Snowpiercer is an allegory for the existentialism of life. As there is one pre-designated route and no driver to the train, all inside are stuck on a train line going endlessly around the world without any destination, meaning that no one inside has any autonomy towards the outside world. This supports the theme of existentialism, as no matter your status, no matter how much wealth or power you have, there will always be things outside of your control. This idea is further supported by the climax to the film, where the train is eventually derailed by an avalanche, and with the only two survivors originating from the back end of the train. This highlights that those higher up on the status hierarchy had no control over the outside world, and therefore they had no influence towards their eventual deaths. An opposing view to this is presented through the protagonist Curtis. When confronted with the idea that those at the top of the hierarchy are the exact same as him, he shows resentment and dismissal.
That's what people in the best place say to people in the worst place.
His journey throughout the film of fighting to get to the front of the train mirrors his journey of fighting to rise up against the elite at the top of the hierarchy. The existentialist view would then mean that his sacrifice in getting to the front was in vain, and contradicts his views on fighting for equality within the social class of the train. A study by the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology concluded that an observer who likes or has positive sentiment toward a protagonist experiences concordant emotional states with that protagonist. It can be argued that Bong Joon-ho wanted the audience to relate more to Curtis's ideology as the audience follow his journey and see the drastic improvement to the living conditions and luxury at the same time as him. To summarise, analysing the train metaphor within Snowpiercer is crucial for exploring the contemporary themes and philosophical discussions within the story. The two main ideologies conveyed in this film come from both extremes of the social hierarchy. The very top of the hierarchy has an existential belief in that you can never have control over everything, no matter where you are on the hierarchy. Therefore, it is irrelevant to trying to change the social hierarchy. The opposing view of this comes from the very bottom of the social hierarchy, which is that the impact of social class incites a need to change and fix the injustices within it. At the end of the film, humanity barely survives. With a new chance to rebuild civilization, and with the train destroyed, it only begs the question, was the social hierarchy destroyed with it?